The adventure begins with an airplane flying through the sky with many passengers, all just minutes away from reaching their destination as the plane passes over an unknown forest, unaware of the destruction about to unfold. Inside the aircraft is a woman named Lisa traveling with her boyfriend, and it turns out this is her very first flight, as she has never been on a plane before. Nervous and scared, Lisa clings tightly to her boyfriend and does not even fasten her seatbelt, a small mistake that unexpectedly ends up saving her life. As the plane continues forward, heavy turbulence shakes the cabin, and the violent jolts make Lisa hold on to her boyfriend even tighter, but something far worse is about to happen. Suddenly, a small private jet, belonging to some unknown wealthy owner, crashes into the large passenger plane, and the situation turns catastrophic as both aircraft collide. A massive hole tears through the body of the plane, causing everything to be violently sucked out, including flight attendants and several passengers who fall to their deaths. Lisa, who is not wearing her seatbelt, is also pulled toward the opening by the powerful force, and although her boyfriend tries desperately to hold on to her, the pressure is too strong for him to do anything. Lisa believes she is about to die, but at the last moment she manages to grab onto a seat and refuses to let go under any circumstances. Her boyfriend, who is wearing a seatbelt, tries to save her, but the plane suddenly breaks into two pieces, and the section where he is seated completely disintegrates and explodes in midair. Watching her boyfriend die right in front of her eyes shatters Lisa emotionally, while the remaining section of the plane carrying her continues falling rapidly toward the ground. She quickly climbs onto the seat she is holding, corrects her mistake, and fastens the seatbelt as the lack of oxygen at such altitude makes it difficult for her to breathe, leaving her helplessly waiting for her fate. As the wreckage plummets, the same unknown forest filled with massive, dense trees comes into view, and unsure whether she will survive, Lisa closes her eyes. The broken section of the plane crashes violently into the forest, killing nearly everyone on board in a way beyond imagination, but after some time Lisa is shown to be alive. Thankfully, the piece of the aircraft she is in is not completely destroyed, and because she is strapped in, she is not thrown around, though she remains barely conscious due to multiple fractures across her body. When she finally tries to unfasten her seatbelt and stand up, she discovers that a sharp iron rod has pierced her leg, and despite her attempts to pull it out, the pain only grows worse as she loses a large amount of blood. Knowing she cannot move unless the rod is removed, Lisa's screams echo through the forest as she forces herself to endure the unbearable pain and eventually pulls it out with extreme difficulty. Once free, her first instinct is to call out for her boyfriend, and when she notices a man in the seat beside her, she goes to check on him but is so horrified by what she sees that the shock overwhelms her and she faints. Some time later, a rescue team of officers appears in the sky after learning that a plane has crashed in the area and arrives to search for survivors. The loud sound of the helicopter wakes Lisa, and in desperation she grabs a scarf from the dead man and starts running to attract the helicopter's attention, screaming and waving it overhead to signal that she is trapped and needs urgent help. Fortunately, one of the officers notices her and tells his senior officer that they should go in for a rescue, but according to the senior officer's calculations, the plane had been flying at a very high altitude, and from such a height, survival should have been impossible. The person you saw on the ground was assumed to be a local resident who was simply waving at the helicopter, and the junior officer could not argue further, so he followed his senior's orders and left the area, making Lisa's effort completely useless as the helicopter seemed unlikely to return. Even with her injured leg, she somehow kept moving forward, while the officers continued searching the forest and found passengers' dead bodies tangled in the trees. However, the thought kept bothering the junior officer, and he managed to convince his senior to make one more round, believing that even if there was a 1% chance of saving someone, they had to try, giving Lisa one more possible chance. Inside the forest, a deeper search had now begun to rescue any remaining survivors, and we are introduced to a woman named Rail, who is trying to help Lisa. As soon as Rail learns about the crash, she approaches the officers, repeatedly sharing her daughter's details and asking about her, but the officers keep avoiding the subject, claiming her daughter was involved in a road accident and that they know nothing more. Rail clearly knows this is a lie, because her daughter was on a plane with her boyfriend, making it obvious that the officers are hiding something and deliberately downplaying the plane crash as a minor road accident, though the dark truth behind this will soon be revealed. Meanwhile, Lisa continues forcing herself through the forest despite her badly injured leg, driven by the hope that her boyfriend might still be alive somewhere in the other broken section of the plane, refusing to accept the truth until she sees his body with her own eyes. While searching the area, she suddenly senses movement nearby, and from behind a tree she sees a tiger in the distance, likely drawn by the many dead bodies scattered around. Lisa slowly backs away, knowing that if the tiger spots her, it will attack without hesitation because tigers prefer living prey, but as she retreats, a broken branch snaps and the sound immediately catches the tiger's attention. The tiger turns and begins moving straight toward her, putting Lisa's life in serious danger, but at that very moment a helicopter roars overhead, its deafening noise frightening the tiger and causing it to flee. Without realizing it, the officers and the helicopter end up saving Lisa's life, and although her heart is racing uncontrollably, the danger passes. Exhausted and overwhelmed by pain, she sits down to rest and tries to calm herself, pulling out a pack of cigarettes to relieve some stress, only to discover that the crash has completely ruined them. Her frustration grows even more as she feels lost and alone in the forest, convinced that everyone else is dead, making the situation feel like a never-ending nightmare. Then her eyes fall on a dry, fragile branch about to snap, and as she stares at it, a thought strikes her and memories from before the crash return, when she had noticed the direction the plane was flying, realizing that they had been heading west. If she could somehow figure out which direction was west, she could move forward because the other section of the plane might be there, but first she needed to determine the direction. As she looked around, she noticed a teddy bear nearby, and after examining it closely, she found a pin attached to the back. For those unfamiliar with this old survival technique, a pin can be used to find direction by first magnetizing it, which can be done by rubbing it against clothing for a short time. Once magnetized, the pin is placed on a leaf and gently set on water, and after waiting for the leaf to settle, the pin aligns itself, with one end pointing north and the other south, giving a clear sense of direction. Lisa applies the same method and successfully figures out the directions, deciding to move toward the west. She gathers anything useful, takes clothing from the dead passengers, breaks off her heels because walking in a forest with them is impossible, and continues moving forward by holding onto trees since her leg injury has still not healed. She never imagined she would end up trapped in such a situation, and it is clear that Lisa is in serious danger because the forest is filled with wild animals and deadly terrain that shows no mercy to humans, while it is uncertain whether the security officers will ever return to rescue her. As she keeps walking in the same direction, she notices several broken trees and begins to suspect that the other part of the plane crashed nearby, confirming she is heading the right way. Suddenly, she slips and falls, only to realize in horror that she has stepped into quicksand, and the more she struggles, the deeper her body sinks, leaving her completely confused and terrified. In such a situation, the most important rule is not to move, because quicksand is designed in a way that any movement pulls the body further down, and if the head sinks, lack of oxygen can become fatal. There is only one real way to escape quicksand, and that is to keep your body completely still while trying to grip any nearby plants or trees and slowly pull yourself upward. If there are no trees around, another method is to dig small holes with your hands near the edge, using them as handholds to gain grip, creating new holes as the old ones collapse, and gradually lifting yourself out. Keeping your toes flat helps reduce how fast the body sinks, and if these steps are followed, it is possible to survive any type of quicksand. Lisa also begins to feel that she might not make it, but she applies the first technique, grabbing nearby plants and slowly pulling herself out, and luckily the small plant is strong enough for her to escape. However, the entire process drains her energy, leaving her barely able to walk, yet she knows she still has to find her boyfriend. As she continues, the terrain turns into a steep incline, forcing her to climb upward on slippery soil, and without thinking about the danger, she starts climbing anyway. Her troubles only begin there, because halfway up, her injured leg slips and she falls hard, sliding rapidly back down, scraping her body against rocks and worsening her injuries. Reaching the bottom, her body feels almost numb, and as she looks back up, she realizes she has to climb again, this time using a piece of wood for support. It feels as if the entire forest and environment are testing whether she can survive such extreme conditions, and despite countless hardships, Lisa keeps moving forward, only to face another nightmare when she suddenly spots the same tiger sitting calmly ahead. If the tiger notices her this time, it will attack without hesitation, and fear is clearly visible in Lisa as she carefully moves sideways without making any noise, hoping the distance between them will keep her hidden. What she does not realize is that a tiger's hearing is extremely sharp, and the moment her footsteps make a sound, the tiger turns toward her, and she understands it is now chasing her. She immediately increases her speed and runs for her life, while the tiger accelerates behind her, taking powerful leaps, and it is obvious she cannot outrun it. Just as it seems the tiger is about to strike, Lisa suddenly falls into a shallow pit formed between two rocks, which unexpectedly saves her life as the tiger searches above without finding her. Lisa loses consciousness from the fall, and when she finally opens her eyes, she realizes she is still inside the pit, desperately hoping the tiger will leave, though she can feel her leg is now even more badly injured and that walking properly may no longer be possible. Suddenly, she hears movement in the bushes, and it is the same tiger, still searching the area for her. Lisa quietly moves into the corner of the pit without making any movement, and although the tiger senses that someone is there, it cannot see properly inside the pit, and after finding nothing, it eventually leaves the area. As night slowly falls, Lisa knows she must find a way out, and while searching around, she discovers a lighter, which strangely makes her happy because she still has a cigarette and can finally smoke. Even in such a life-threatening situation, she feels the need to smoke, believing that if this is her final time, she should do what brings her comfort. With night fully set in, Lisa uses the lighter to start a fire, and the warmth helps her body feel better as she begins smoking. Luckily, she also finds a can of food that fell from the plane and is not expired, and she eats it immediately, feeling her strength slowly return as the weakness from the crash fades away. Her confidence begins to rise, and she believes she can now make it through the forest, though many unknown dangers still remain that could cost her life. Meanwhile, elsewhere, several Air Force officers are shown discussing something important, and one of them, clearly frustrated, reveals a critical mistake, explaining that during aircraft testing, Air Force pilots normally inform commercial and passenger planes, but this time, they failed to pass on that information. The so-called private plane was actually an Air Force aircraft, and because the passenger plane was never informed, neither pilot knew the other's location, leading the Air Force jet to collide directly with the commercial plane and cause the massive disaster. This explains why the officers are trying to hide the truth, because if the government and the public discover that the crash happened due to an Air Force error, serious questions will be raised, the public will demand accountability, and the government will be directly blamed for the deaths of so many people, turning the incident into a major headline. Unable to figure out what else to do, the officers focus entirely on covering up the incident. Somehow, Lisa keeps pushing forward through the forest, even as her injured leg begins to give up on her, but when she finally reaches a higher area, she suddenly spots the front section of the plane, the very piece she has been searching for all this time. A spark of hope ignites in her mind that her boyfriend might still be alive inside that wreckage, and at the very least, seeing it with her own eyes will give her certainty. Despite being completely exhausted, a sudden surge of strength runs through her body as she rushes toward it, but another challenge stands in her way because the plane wreckage lies across a fast-flowing river. With no other option and driven by the need to save her boyfriend, Lisa jumps into the river, and at first everything seems manageable, but as she moves deeper, the strong current begins dragging her forward. The pain in her leg intensifies, her balance weakens, and it feels like she might be swept away, yet she refuses to give up and uses whatever strength she has left to push herself forward, inching closer to the opposite bank. After a desperate struggle, she finally reaches the shore, grabs onto a large rock, and pulls herself across, now standing close enough to clearly see the front section of the plane, its windows smeared with blood, making it likely that the pilots did not survive. Inside, there are several dead passengers, but Lisa does not look closely and instead opens the cockpit door, where she finds a small emergency kit containing a flare gun and its cartridges, meant for signaling in emergencies. This is exactly what she needs, so she quickly loads the flare gun and fires it into the sky, and although the signal becomes visible in the distance, bad luck strikes again as no helicopter is nearby to notice it. Disappointed but not defeated, she prepares to fire another flare, then suddenly stops herself, realizing that wasting the ammunition would be pointless, so she removes the cartridge and decides to wait until a helicopter is closer. Lisa then begins gathering more useful items, but nature seems to turn against her as the temperature suddenly drops, and she starts feeling intensely cold, with hardly any clothing left to keep her body warm. She quickly gathers all the wood to start a fire, but the lighter no longer works, obviously because it got wet, leaving her unable to light a fire and forcing her to face the freezing temperature. Lisa's mind starts to shut down, yet she somehow manages to put a plastic bag over her head to help maintain a normal temperature so her brain can keep functioning. She lies down, but the cold only keeps getting worse, and before long, she passes out right there. No one knows how she will survive, and the scene then shifts to another part of the forest where Rael and the parents of Lisa's boyfriend have also arrived, deeply worried about their children and desperate to go inside. However, the officers have completely sealed off the forest, refusing entry to anyone until their investigation is finished, even stopping the victims' families from going in. Lisa's boyfriend's mother, Kelly, begs repeatedly for permission, but she is ultimately denied, while his father, Stuart, is equally distressed and hopes that his connections with senior officers might help locate their children. Unable to wait any longer, Kelly, overwhelmed as a mother, makes a sudden decision, starts her car, and drives straight into the restricted area, shocking the officers, who immediately chase her in their jeeps. Driving skillfully through multiple forest routes, Kelly reaches the base camp where senior officers are conducting their investigation, and soon the other officers arrive and detain Kelly and Stewart. However, a senior officer who knows Stewart is already there, and he orders the others to let them go. Rail, Kelly, and Stewart are quickly called into the office, where the same officers explain the details of the case, understanding that these parents are extremely worried and cannot be treated harshly. All three parents are left in deep shock when they learn that the plane truly did crash, that a rescue team was sent, but that no survivors were found. However, neither Lisa's parents nor her boyfriend's parents are willing to believe that their children are dead, and they refuse to accept it until they see the truth with their own eyes. The officers assure them that the investigation is still ongoing, and both families provide photographs of their children to help with identification. One of the junior officers becomes deeply troubled and immediately informs his senior that during the initial helicopter search, he may have seen a woman waving at them, possibly calling for help. This time, the senior officer cannot ignore it and quickly orders another helicopter to return and check the area, as a full team prepares for the mission. Back in the forest, Lisa is shown in a much weaker state than before, having nearly lost hope that her boyfriend could still be alive, though her love for him keeps her from fully accepting that reality. The weather has worsened, with heavy rain beginning to fall, and as she looks around, Lisa spots a bag hanging in a tree, which turns out to belong to her boyfriend. When she checks it, she finds several drawings he had made of her, and seeing them causes her to drift into memories and emotions, lost in a flood of dreams and hope. She becomes lost in memories, recalling the beautiful moments she spent with her boyfriend and missing him deeply, and soon begins to believe that he might be nearby, pushing herself to search even faster. When she reaches a pit, she suddenly sees her boyfriend sitting there in pain, and without hesitation, Lisa jumps down, ignoring the agony in her own injured leg, rushes to him, hugs him tightly, and feels overwhelming joy that he is alive and that they will survive. The sound of a helicopter echoes above, making it feel as if everything is finally going to be okay, but this is not reality at all, it is only Lisa's imagination. In truth, her boyfriend is there, but he does not respond, his body is cold, and he is already dead, and when this reality hits her, Lisa breaks down completely, crying uncontrollably, unable to accept that something like this could happen. Yet it is clear that in such a catastrophic crash, survival is nearly impossible, and she herself is incredibly lucky to still be alive. Completely broken, Lisa decides to stay there, but this is not her destiny, and after some time, she realizes she has to move on, knowing that if her boyfriend were alive, he would want her to survive. She says her final goodbye and tries to leave, but ice and water have made the area slippery, making it difficult to climb out of the pit. Meanwhile, a large team of officers is shown searching the area desperately for any survivors, and one senior officer reaches the broken plane section and smells a recently fired flare, realizing that someone nearby is alive. Their search intensifies as Lisa, in unbearable pain, somehow lifts the flare gun, loads the second cartridge, and fires it into the sky, and as the loud sound and bright red light spread across the area, the officers immediately spot the signal, rush toward her, and begin the rescue. A complex and haunting expression rests on Lisa's face, one that cannot be defined as complete sadness or true happiness, because although she has survived, she has lost the person she loved more than anything in her life. After nearly a week of unimaginable pain, isolation, and fear, she is finally rescued, but survival itself feels heavy rather than victorious. What makes this story even more disturbing is that it is not just fiction, but is inspired by a real incident from the last century, when a Soviet Union commercial aircraft collided midair with an Air Force plane. The crash was so catastrophic that everyone on board was killed, except for one woman named Lisa, who somehow managed to survive against all odds. The military authorities tried to keep the incident hidden, unwilling to let the truth reach the public, but eventually the facts came out. When the reality was revealed, all responsibility fell on the Air Force, which was accused of negligence and held accountable for the tragic loss of so many innocent lives. This devastating story ends here, leaving behind a reminder of how fragile life can be and how survival sometimes comes at an unbearable emotional cost.